Hello, in this video we're going to show you how to draw and how to interpret a frequency polygon. So the example we've got is some data about the heights of 60 different plants, and the way the data is presented is in a grouped frequency table. So for example, the first group shows the plants that ranged between 20 and 30 centimetres in height, and there were 8 of those. Then we had 13 plants that had heights somewhere between 30 and 40 centimetres, and so on. What we're asked to draw is a frequency polygon to represent the data. A frequency polygon is basically like a line graph that represents those different numbers, those frequencies relative to one another. Okay, we've got the axes given to us in the question and the graph paper. You should check here that the axes have been labelled. Always make sure you've got them labelled. The frequency should always be this vertical axis here, and then whatever the thing is that we're measuring, in this case we're measuring height, that should go along the horizontal axis. So just make sure they've been labelled and that you're happy with what the scale is that's being used. So the height starts from 20 and then goes up in tens, so that one of these tiny little squares is worth 1 centimetre of height. Okay, the way these diagrams work, we've got to find a single point on the graph to represent that first group. Now, the first group of plants range from 20 centimetres up to 30, so the most sensible point to represent that range is to go right in the middle, to use the midpoint. So we're going to use 25 on the this axis here to represent that group. So you find 25, then you're looking for a frequency of 8, so I need to count 8 of these little squares up. And you just put yourself a little cross where that point should be. So the midpoint there of 25 and the frequency of 8. Then just the same for all the others. So the midpoint of the next group is 35 and the frequency is 13. So go along first, find 35, then go upwards, find 13. So there's 10, count 1, 2, 3, up from there. And that's my next little marker. Next one, the midpoint is going to be 45 and the frequency is going to be 25. So put a cross there. Then 55 for the height, 10 for the frequency. And finally 65 for the midpoint of the heights and 4 for the frequency. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all the frequency polygon is if you now join those points with straight lines, that's a frequency polygon. Okay, I've tried to do reasonably neat straight lines there. If this is an exam question, you should use a ruler to make sure they're perfectly neat and accurate, but that's your frequency polygon. Okay, a couple more questions which are on interpreting this data really. The first one is, what is the modal class interval? Remember, the mode is the most frequent or most common one. So there's two ways you can do it now. You can look at the table and you can look for the one with the highest frequency, or if you look at the picture, then this one with the highest value here is going to be the modal class interval. So the answer to question 2 is this class. Don't worry too much about the notation, but that just says that the heights are somewhere between 40 and 50 centimetres. Okay, then one of the plants is chosen at random. What's the probability that this plant is more than 50 centimetres tall? Now, for probabilities, we use fractions to represent them. And on the top of the fraction, we need to say how many of these plants that there were. How many plants existed that were more than 50 centimetres? Well, not these. All these are from 20, 30, 40, up to 50. So all of those plants are less than 50 centimetres. We've just got these last two categories. We've got 10 here that were between 50 and 60. Then we've got these 4 as well that were from 60 upwards up to 70. So in total there were 14 plants that were more than 50 centimetres tall. Then on the bottom of the fraction we need to put the total number of plants that there were. It tells us that in the question, that's 60. Normally you will be given that information in the question, but if you're not sure, you could always just add up the frequencies to get that total, so you'd still get an answer of 60. So there's the probability. I should really simplify that answer if possible, so hopefully you would notice that these two numbers are both even numbers. They have a common factor of 2, so I can take that common factor out, and that would leave me with 7 over 30, which is the simplest possible answer for that probability. Okay, now it's your turn. We're going to put some questions up on the board for you to answer. The idea is that you would pause the video, spend as long as you need to work through the questions, and then when you've finished, if you want to check your answer, just replay the video and the answers will be revealed.